Let's break down tariffs, those mysterious fees you keep hearing about in the news. Think of them as a tax one country puts on goods from another, like a cover charge at the border, but for products instead of people. When a shipment arrives from overseas, the government steps in and says, if you want to sell that here, you'll have to pay extra. For example, if the U.S. slaps a 25% tariff on French cheese, that $10 brie now costs $12, $50 before it even hits the shelf. That extra cost often gets passed on to you, the shopper, making imported goods noticeably more expensive. The goal? Make foreign goods pricier so Americans buy local. It's a way to give homegrown businesses a leg up, hoping you'll reach for the domestic option instead of the import. The Trump administration took this to the next level, using tariffs as a key tool to protect U.S. industries and pressure countries like China. Suddenly, tariffs weren't just about protecting jobs. They became a weapon in global trade negotiations. To do this, they dusted off a 1977 law, the International Emergency Economic Powers Act, or IEPA. This law was originally meant for real emergencies, think war or national security threats, but now, it was being used to declare an economic emergency and justify sweeping new tariffs. Practically overnight, tariffs hit everything from steel and aluminum to electronics and even baby products. Some Chinese goods faced tariffs as high as 145% before eventually settling at around 30%. The sheer scale and speed of these changes caught many by surprise. This was a shock to global supply chains. Companies that relied on overseas suppliers now faced huge new costs, forcing them to rethink how and where they sourced their products. Businesses had to make tough choices, absorb the costs and risk lower profits, pass them on to consumers in the form of higher prices, or scramble to find new suppliers in other countries, often at the last minute, to avoid the tariffs altogether. The tariff wave wasn't just a tweak, it was a seismic shift for American business, reshaping everything from the price of everyday goods to the fate of entire industries. Here's the legal showdown at the heart of American democracy, a battle over who truly holds the power to shape the nation's economic destiny. The Constitution is clear. Congress, not the president, has the authority to set tariffs and regulate trade with foreign nations. This separation of powers is a cornerstone of the American system, designed to prevent any one branch from becoming too powerful. But when President Trump invoked the International Emergency Economic Powers Act, known as IEPA, to impose sweeping tariffs on imports, it set off a firestorm. Hundreds of businesses, from small manufacturers to global corporations, rushed to the courts, arguing that the president had gone too far and exceeded his legal authority. Their argument was simple. IEPA was created to give the president tools to respond to genuine national emergencies, not as a backdoor to launch a global trade war or bypass Congress's constitutional role. These business leaders and legal experts warned that allowing such a move could fundamentally upend the delicate balance of power between Congress and the White House, setting a dangerous precedent for future presidents. The Trump administration, however, pushed back hard. They argued that the broad language of IEPA was intentionally flexible, giving the president the ability to act quickly in the face of economic threats, even going so far as to declare unfair trade practices a national emergency. As the lawsuits made their way through the courts, lower judges were deeply divided. Some sided with the businesses, others with the administration, highlighting just how complex and unprecedented the issue was. Ultimately, the Supreme Court was called upon to answer a fundamental question. Can the president use emergency powers to reshape the nation's trade policy? Or does that vital power remain firmly in the hands of Congress? Billions of dollars in trade, the livelihoods of countless businesses, and a core constitutional principle were all hanging in the balance. The outcome of this case would not only define the limits of presidential power in trade, but also set a precedent for how emergency powers could be used or abused in the future. The stakes couldn't be higher for both government and business, as the nation watched to see how the highest court would interpret the Constitution in this historic clash. While the legal battle raged in the courts and headlines, the real struggle was happening far from the spotlight, in the offices, warehouses, and storefronts across America. American businesses, large and small, were the ones feeling the squeeze, forced to pay the tariffs up front, often with little warning or time to prepare. It wasn't foreign governments paying these fees. Importers, the companies bringing goods into the U.S., were hit first. Many had no choice but to pass those extra costs down the line. raising prices for everyday consumers. For small businesses, the impact was immediate and personal. Busy Baby, a family-run company, faced $40,000 in unexpected costs, an amount that could determine whether they survived another year or closed their doors for good. Green Bar Distillery, known for its craft spirits, suddenly saw the price of imported bottles skyrocket. The spike threatened not just their profits, but the jobs of their workers and the future of the business itself. For Thompson Traders, a family business importing handcrafted goods, the bill was even steeper. Over $1 million in tariffs wiped out years of hard-earned profits, pushing them deep into debt and forcing tough decisions about layoffs and cutbacks. Even corporate giants weren't immune. Companies like Costco and Revlon, with millions on the line, took their fight to court, suing for the right to reclaim some of the money they'd paid in tariffs. The effects rippled outward. With profits squeezed, businesses invested less in new equipment, hiring slowed, and families across the country saw prices rise on everything from groceries to household goods. For many, tariffs weren't just a distant policy, they became a daily crisis, threatening livelihoods and dreams built over generations. That's why the We Pay the Tariffs coalition formed, uniting business owners to send a clear message. It was American businesses, not foreign governments, who bore the brunt of these policies. Every extra dollar spent on tariffs was a dollar that couldn't go toward hiring new workers, expanding operations, or lowering prices for customers. The opportunity cost was felt in every corner of the economy. From bustling main streets to quiet family dinner tables, the impact of tariffs was real, reshaping the lives of business owners, workers, and families across the nation. The tariff debate was fierce. Supporters saw tariffs as a way to fight unfair trade, revive U.S. manufacturing, and protect jobs, even if it meant higher prices. They argued it was a necessary tool to force countries like China to play fair. Opponents, from small shops to multinationals, called tariffs a self-inflicted wound, hurting American companies and consumers most. They warned that modern supply chains are global, and tariffs disrupt everything. Critics also saw the president's use of IEEPA as a dangerous overreach, undermining the Constitution. The Supreme Court was asked to decide, is this tough trade policy or a one-man trade war? On December 7, 2025, the Supreme Court ruled the president's use of IEEPA for broad tariffs was unconstitutional. The court said only Congress can set tariff policy, not the executive branch. Emergencies can't justify a years-long global tariff regime. The decision reaffirmed the separation of powers, even in complex economic times. Dissenting justices argued for more presidential flexibility, but the majority drew a clear line. For businesses, it was a huge win. The tariffs were illegal, and the money collected shouldn't have been. The ruling set up a new question: would companies get their money back? The decision was a turning point for trade law and presidential authority. With the tariffs struck down, refunds became the next big issue. The government admitted billions in tariffs would need to be returned to importers. Companies that filed lawsuits, big and small, lined up for their share. For some, like Busy Baby, a refund could save the business. For others, it meant millions back for investment or lower prices. Customs now faces a massive refund operation, but not all tariffs are gone, just those under IEEPA. The administration can still use other, more targeted laws to impose tariffs, but with more legal hurdles. U.S. trade policy is in flux, with Congress and the White House set for a new power struggle. The future will likely see more legal battles and new trade strategies. The Supreme Court's decision changed the rules of the game. This Supreme Court decision is about more than tariffs. It's about who holds power in America. It reasserts Congress's role in economic policy and limits the president's ability to act alone. For businesses, it means relief and a more stable environment for planning and investment. The ruling could help repair strained global relationships and encourage negotiation over confrontation. It sets a precedent. Sweeping economic changes need debate, not just executive orders. The decision will shape trade, law, and the balance of power for years to come. It's a win for checks and balances, and for every American who pays the price when government overreaches. This chapter will be studied as a turning point in how America does business with the world.